95% of electricity customers remain without power, including some hospitals. Look at that. Much of the countryside still struggling to access basic necessities like food, water, and even cash. I said the ATM machines are down. And today, President Trump landed on the island and came face to face with the apocalyptic world Puerto Rico has been living with. There he is. In a briefing with local and federal officials, Trump told reporters of the high praise his administration was getting, on their response effort. Here he is.
Right from the beginning, this governor did not play politics. He didn't play it at all. He was saying it like it was, and he was giving us the highest grade. Congresswoman Jennifer Gonzalez Colon, who I've watched the other day, and she was saying such nice things about all of the people that have worked so hard.
Well, he also seemed to fault the island for receiving help from the government.
I hate to tell you, Puerto Rico, but you've thrown our budget a little out of whack, because we've spent a lot of money on Puerto Rico, and that's fine. We've saved a lot of lives. If you look at the, every death is a horror. But if you look at a real catastrophe like Katrina, and you look at the tremendous hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that died, 16 people certified, 16 people versus in the thousands. You can be very proud of all of your people, all of our people working together. 16 versus literally thousands of people.
Well, the awkward comparison to Katrina came as his administration.
New York Congressman Joe Crowley is chairman of the House Democratic group on some of these issues. I want to ask you, what is the most important thing for Congress to do, and should it be in response this quickly to this incident, this murder?
If not now, when? We've seen so many tragic events like this happen over the past few years. It's becoming numbing, quite frankly. There have been as many mass casualty shootings days of the year, as many days in the year. There's almost as many mass casualty shootings, almost matching the number of days in the year so far. So if not now, when are we going to actually try to tackle this issue? And I do think that we need to move towards a real bipartisan effort here. You know, bring in the NRA, bring in everyone in. Let's have a really frank conversation, a family talk.
Well, do you think
what we can do?
Do you think you and your fellow Democratic advocates of gun control seem to have lost some of the framing on this? If you're being accused of saying, "Oh, you only want this now," it's not as if Republicans aren't moving forward on gun issues, right? There's this whole silencer debate we're hearing about, and I want to play for your benefit of response and for our viewers, the president's own son, Don Jr., in a promotional video on this issue. Take a look at this.
You've got to be kidding me. That thing's awesome. It's about safety. It's about hearing protection. It's a health issue, frankly, for me. You know, getting little kids into the
administration has been actively trying to combat the perception that they were slow to respond to the disaster on the island. President Trump spent the weekend attacking what he politically motivated ingrates, who he said wanted everything done for them. He also went after the mayor of San Juan, who slammed the administration's response to the hurricane, criticizing her poor leadership ability. The president's schedule was carefully orchestrated to limit his exposure to the public. That was smart. Near the end of his trip, Trump visited a relief center, tossing rolls of paper towels, bounty quicker picker-uppers into the crowd, and handing out cans of chicken, and also flashlights. And for more, I'm joined by U.S. Congressman Adriana Espaillat, who's a Democrat from New York, and Yamiche Alcindor, of course, reporter for the New York Times and an MSNBC contributor. Law, I don't know how to do this, and I know you represent probably a lot of people, Latinos and people that care about Puerto Rico. They come from there, which is part of this country. But what's the screw-up about? Is it FEMA's fault? Is it Trump's fault? Is it the governor's fault? This is a lot of finger-pointing going on here. Nobody seems to be saying there, except for Trump. He says, I'm doing a great job.
Well, look, I think, first of all, we were late to get there. But obviously, this is not an easy task. I think it requires really the Department of Defense to go in there and lay out a plan, almost like if they were in an armed conflict. You got to fix roads. You got to remove debris. You have to put floatable bridges to connect.
Like we did in Somalia a few years ago. We went in force.
This is no different.
Game, it greatly reduces recoil. I mean, it's just a great instrument. There's nothing, there's nothing bad about it at all. It makes total sense. It's where we should be going.
Getting little kids into the game, it's a health issue. There's nothing bad about it at all. Your response?
It's actually heading in the exact opposite direction. How much longer would it have taken law enforcement to identify this particular shooter, Mr. Paddock, had he had silencers? We just don't know. This is not the debate that we should be having right now. It's incredibly insensitive, if we ever should have it at all, quite frankly. And I think that really the time right now is to, if there was some other disease happening, or if there was if there was food contamination, if there was an auto safety issue, we would be calling a special hearing by the Congress to investigate those things. But when it comes to gun safety, it's almost so sacrosanct we can't even have a discussion about it. There's almost a gag rule here in Congress in discussing these issues, and that's what we're looking to lift here in Washington, and to do it in a sincere, sympathetic, empathetic way, and understanding all the ramifications, and try to listen to all sides on this, but to come to some kind of solution. Too many innocent people are
different than that kind of an operation. To rebuild Puerto Rico is going to take years, but they need money. They need $20 billion right away. They can't wait another week.
Well, what would that go to?
That will go to Puerto Rico, hopefully to the municipalities. They know where the people are stuck in their homes that have not been able to get out. Right now, the U.S. forces there are airlifting some help there to those towns in the hills that have been disconnected. No water, no electricity.
What's this about guys not getting in their trucks to deliver water? The people aren't just doing stuff that they're supposed to be doing. It sounds terrible.
I mean, it sounds terrible, and I think when you talk about who there is to blame, you have to think about the fact that this president essentially failed really at communicating the importance of this and staying layers are focused on Puerto Rico. So many people, while they think that the U.S. government was trying to do all that it could, while his tweets on the NFL, his arguments with the mayor, all that made people feel as though he was unfocused, even if he was trying his best. The idea that you're saying, well, this is not a real catastrophe because this is not really my Katrina. He's not saying that this isn't as terrible as Katrina. What he's really saying is that this isn't my problem.
Okay, Congressman, you're a politician, all right? There's nothing wrong with being a politician. I like politicians. But the optics. He acts like he's Prince Charles visiting one of the colonies. I mean, he shows up in that ridiculous costume with his beautiful wife.
Dying because of this. And I think Republicans and Democrats, we can come together, certainly on this issue, and find real ways to find real solutions to prevent as many deaths as possible when it comes to gun violence.
You said that there shouldn't be a gag order. I want you to hang with me here, and I want to add someone who's worked on these issues a lot. Mike Lupica from the New York Daily News. He's got a new column about the gun control debate. I want to read from that. You say, we can't wait for the gunfire to stop because it doesn't. Maybe we could have the conversation while the next active shooter is reloading. Tough talk, and you say it's necessary. Why?
Ari, that was the thing yesterday in the aftermath of this tragedy that I think made reasonable people's heads explode. The idea that this wasn't a good time to have this conversation. This wasn't the day to have this conversation. Okay, all the people who say that, pick a day. Pick a day and tell the rest of us when they think it's appropriate to talk about 59 innocent Americans getting gunned down and 500 more getting wounded. There's a false equivalency that goes on all the time in this debate. Well, this guy passed background checks. Oh, okay. So we should leave everything the way it is until the next guy who didn't pass a background check shoots up people in the United States. This country's...
That's great, but it's very ceremonial. Doesn't it look ceremonial today? Well, like he's not really there to lead any effort. He's there to be seen throwing out, paper towels. Paper towels? Why would he be throwing it like it's the dolphins in SeaWorld? He only had enough paper towels for like 1 in 100 people there. Well, they were all going to be looking like fools, reaching for towels, and nobody gets one.
Well, look, this is not about exchanging niceties or throwing three-point shots with paper towels. This is about saving people's lives. I spent Saturday.
Look at it, here we go. Here, what is this about? What is he?
Wait, but remember,
optics. What is he trying to sell there?
People, all the people that I interviewed on the campaign trail who love Donald Trump,
he's president of the United States.
Voted for an entertainer. And you know what they're getting? They're getting an entertainer. This is someone who understands that he's going there to look good. He's going there for optics. He actually says the word optics when you ask him what his motives are for certain things, like firing Tom Price. So the idea that he's not even running from the fact that he says, look, I built my my reputation on The Apprentice, and this is what I get. You get someone that's like a reality TV president.
Yes, but even Oprah and Ellen, they say everybody in the United States is going home with a book or go home with a car or something like. He's only throwing out these little.
Become a killing field. And the idea that it's working, that our laws are working, is dumb as rocks.
Congressman, I think I saw you nodding. Go ahead.
Well, there's no question. I think Mike remembers the same argument was made after Newtown, that it wasn't the time. This isn't the time to talk about it. You know, when innocent children are slaughtered in their school.
Items to a few people. It's not even.
Well, you know, and this is in San Juan or in Bayamon.
Yeah.
But the real areas, the areas that were hard hit up in the mountains.
Yes.
When young people attending a concert, an open-air concert in Las Vegas, are literally slaughtered, that's not the right time to talk about what we can do to stop or mitigate this public health disaster that's going on in our country. If not now, when? That's the question I ask. And Mike, I agree with you 100%. Tell us when to have the conversation, but let's have the conversation.
And so, Congressman and then Mike, respond to this question. How do you draw the line to deal with the weapons on offense? Because the Supreme Court has recognized an individual right to bear arms, whether people like it or not. That is the jurisprudential holding of the court. And people have a right to have a weapon in their home for self-defense, just like they have that right for shooting and hunting. So starting with you, Congressman, how do you recognize that right, which, as I mentioned, is law, and then patrol what people say we saw in Las Vegas, which was not at home, which was a weapon of offense, a weapon of...
No one ever saw
They're never going to see him either. Anyway, throughout the visit, the president continuously referred to the low official death count as a way to congratulate officials and himself on their response to the crisis. Let's take a listen.
What's happened in terms of recovery, in terms of saving lives? 16 lives, it's a lot. But you compare that to the thousands of people that died in other hurricanes, and frankly, we're not nearly as severe.
Well, Fox News has reported that those numbers of his, the 16, are most likely inaccurate because the government is not functioning enough to document the true death toll, which is likely to rise. Yamiche, this story, is this reaching Katrina's stage in terms of bad news for the development of the administration, the effort of FEMA?
A lot of this is going to depend on how many people actually perish. I think the president is right in some ways to say that we haven't lost as many people as we did in Katrina right now. But if it goes to the Katrina numbers, and then we start having to connect that to his trips to the golf courses and him being distracted while Americans were perishing, that's where we get to the Katrina level dysfunction, because George Bush essentially was most criticized because people died on their roofs.
Murder, a set of weapons that looked like something you would basically only need to commit felonious conduct, not to defend yourself. How do you, as a law...
Waiting for the American government to save them.
Well, you know, also, this is not at the level where potential epidemics could hit the island. This is the tropics.
Lawmaker, find that line.
I would say that the American people expect us to use common sense and to approach this in a very judicious way, take into consideration all the historical facts about the Second Amendment, and actually invoke laws that save the public health first. You know, the right to bear arms does not usurp the right to life under the Constitution, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So life is right there. And I think that that's what we should be looking at as a Congress, find common sense ground, things that we can agree with, and enact those laws.
And Mike, briefly.
Ari, the Second Amendment was written for muskets, okay? There's this notion that if you support any kind of gun control in this country, you're supporting the government coming up your driveway in a tank and coming to take your weapons. That's not what this is about. This guy owned enough guns to invade California. There's got to be a way to flag people like this.
And Congressman, I thank you. And Mike, if the NRA will come on the beat and talk to you about it, will you speak to an NRA representative about
Absolutely.
it? Okay.
I absolutely would.
And you would as well, Congressman.
Sure
that
would,
invite is out to the leadership of the NRA. As always, we like to have a lot of views on this show. Consider that an open invite. Thank you, gentlemen.
There have been as many mass casualty shootings days of the year, as many days in the year, there's almost as many mass casualty shootings, almost matching the number of days in the year so far. So if not now, when are we going to actually try to tackle this issue? And I do think that we need to move towards a real bipartisan effort here. You know, bring in the NRA, bring in everyone in. Let's have a really frank conversation, a family talk
well, do you
about
think,
what we can do.
95% of electricity customers remain without power, including some hospitals. Look at that. Much of the countryside still struggling to access basic necessities like food, water, and even cash. I said the ATM machines are down. And today, President Trump landed on the island and came face to face with the apocalyptic world Puerto Rico has been living with. There he is. In a briefing with local and federal officials, Trump told reporters of the high praise his administration was getting, they were getting, on their response effort. Here he is.
Budget a little out of whack because we've spent a lot of money on Puerto Rico, and that's fine. We've saved a lot of lives. If you look at the every death is a horror, but if you look at a real catastrophe like Katrina, and you look at the tremendous hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that died, 16 people certified, 16 people versus in the thousands. You can be very proud of all of your people, all of our people working together. 16 versus literally thousands of people.
Well, the awkward comparison to Katrina came as his administration.
New York Congressman Joe Crowley is chairman of the House Democratic group on some of these issues. I want to ask you, what is the most important thing for Congress to do, and should it be in response this quickly to this incident, this murder?
If not now, when? We've seen so many tragic events like this happen over the past few years. It's becoming numbing, quite frankly.
Right from the beginning, this governor did not play politics. He didn't play it at all. He was saying it like it was, and he was giving us the highest grade. Congresswoman Jennifer Gonzalez Colon, who I've watched the other day, and she was saying such nice things about all of the people that have worked so hard.
Well, he also seemed to fault the island for receiving help from the government.
I hate to tell you, Puerto Rico, but you've thrown our budget.